On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, in this month of frights and scares and ghouls and goblins, is the scariest thing facing the Toronto Raptors the schedule?
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. It is Tuesday, October the 8th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for going on 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the bad website that sucks, at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server for free at the link in the description and join all of these Raptors fans from all walks of life who join the Discord to procrastinate doing their daily work tasks. It's a great place to come hang out. We would love to see you there. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review on the audio apps on YouTube as well. And today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Let's get to it here. We got a bit of a grab bag of topics for you related to the Raptors in the preseason and the season to come. We're going to talk a little about Jamal Shead and realistic Shead expectations for the Raptors rookie. We're going to get into our first impressions of the Raptors revamped defense, and we're going to talk a little about that spooky thing we call strength of schedule. We're going to do it all with our pal Vivek Jacob. Big V, what's going on from Raptors in 7 and Sportsnet? How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Great to see some Raptors basketball and great to see some defense. Ball movement we expected. RJ being efficient we expected. Hopefully he heals up quick. But it's nice to get into the swing of things and can't wait for the NBA season to get here, baby.
Yeah, after one preseason game, I'm good. Get me to the regular season. I don't need any more preseason games, but we got 4 more of them to sift through. We will do that, of course, dutifully here on the podcast. But we don't got another game until Friday. And so that means we get to kind of dig into some more broader topics from the first preseason game, from just sort of the general discourse around the team. And I want to start today, Big V, with the thing that everyone got scared by when they showed the graphic during the broadcast on Sunday, which is the Raptors opening strength of schedule. They have the hardest schedule in the league, I believe, for the first 25 games, what the graphic said. First of all, part of this is math in that the 4 teams on that list with the hardest schedules are 4 teams who had bad records last season. And so their records are not baked into their opposing schedules. And so, of course, they're a little higher up in the strength of schedule rankings than teams that get to play the terrible teams. But I digress. We know it's a pretty tough start for the Raptors. They have an early season West Coast road trip a la 2006, where, think back to those road trips back in the day where they would get waxed, go 1-4, and the season would be off the rails before it started. There's potential for that. There's a lot of really good teams on the schedule in the first couple weeks here. They played Denver twice. They got Boston in the first few weeks. Of course, they start with the Cavaliers. It's not going to be an easy road for the Raptors to kick things off, but Big V, does this matter? Is this something Raptors fans should actually be worried about, especially in a season where there aren't any expectations and they're probably going to be bad anyway?
Yeah, so expectations-wise, it doesn't really change much. We've had Masai Ujiri already come out and say, hey, this is going to be a rebuilding season, and all the players seem to be on the same page. Obviously, they're going to compete. They're going to try and win every game, but everyone seems to recognize that they are sort of still in the beginning phase of getting back to where they want to be. And so from that standpoint, nothing really changes. I do think that, with a young team, it's always difficult to win at the NBA level, unless you've got, a couple seasons under your belt with a core together. So that's not the case with this team. And so there's going to be those growing pains. And that's where, if it was an easier start to the season, you could see them possibly building some momentum and then feeling good about themselves and maybe being able to carry that into tougher games.
Right.
That's not the case
here. I actually think I come at it from a bit of a different perspective in that I would rather they just get a gauntlet out of the gate. This is a team that wasted all of last year playing non-meaningful basketball that didn't do anything for them. This is a team that is trying to build something from the ground up. They're trying to establish core principles and a scheme and identity and all of that stuff. They're trying to get guys chemistry and it's sort of continuity and time playing together and reps. And I would much rather see them do that against teams that are actually going to test them and make them have to earn it than going out and playing the Wizards every night, right? Where it's just like, well, we can kind of show up, we cannot bring our best, and we can still probably win because the Wizards are the Wizards. I would much rather they go through a really tough early slate of competition in a year where they're not fighting for seeding. It doesn't matter where they finish in the standings, really. They're probably going to pick up a lot of losses in the early going, and that's probably good for the lottery heads out there. It will satiate that desire to go and be bad and kind of accrue wins or accrue losses, that is. And they can do that while playing meaningful basketball games against teams that are going to force them to kind of be on and connected and on the string. I think last year, Vivek, to the game against the OKC Thunder in February, right? That sort of fleeting stretch where the Raptors played some good ball with what we figure is going to be something close to what the team is this year. And that Thunder game might have been the single most memorable game of the season, the double OT loss in February. And it also was a game that was pretty instructive. It taught us a lot of things. It showed us, hey, like Quickley and Barrett, Jakob Poeltl working that pick and roll with Quickley. Like this can be a thing you lean on late in games against good teams. That was obviously a big learning experience for Scotty Barnes with the sulking and not getting the ball. And it seemed like he took what he learned in that game where he just did not bring it. It was like his first test as the leader of the team and he failed it poorly. Like he carried that with him throughout the entire offseason. Games against good teams are good. It's like iron sharpening iron. It's the exact same thing Jamal Shead was talking about in his post game on Sunday about how in practice, getting guarded by Davion Mitchell every day makes you better. It makes it easier and more free and open when you go out into the world and play teams that don't have Davion Mitchell. And so because they're not in the pursuit of as many wins as possible, I kind of think this is the best way to hit the ground running for this team and kind of force them to get their act together right out of the gate. What do you think?
Yeah, I see all that. I fully agree with that. Going up against top competition will force you to learn things a lot quicker than otherwise. But I also feel that in terms of big picture, in terms of decision making that might come down from the front office, that's where, okay, if you're so far behind the eight ball so early, it might lean the team in a specific direction with a particular draft class saying, hey, okay, you know what? There's no way we're going to get back into this. Whereas maybe, hey, if you're right there in that play-in conversation right from the get-go, it's going to be harder to bow out of that.
That's fair. I think the really interesting wrinkle here is how cream puff the schedule is to close the season in the theoretical tanking window. The last 20 games, I think 15 are against like the pure dregs of the NBA. There could be some spectacular tank off games going on during that time if things go really poorly for the Raptors here. But I also wonder, like, if you get to that part of the year and you're still well below 500 because you've had this gauntlet through the first 50, 60 games, like how badly can you, like how much can you actually improve your standing if you're playing all these games against really bad teams and it's kind of a coin flip as to whether or not you'll win the tank off? Does it almost incentivize them to just kind of play it out like they seemed like they wanted to last year? Like, what do you sort of make of that wrinkle in the schedule here? Yes, it's very tough for the first stretch, but in that window where we kind of look at it as like the Mickey Mouse portion of the schedule most years, they're playing against a whole lot of teams that are going to be trying as hard, if not harder than the Raptors to lose.
Yeah. And I think the important part of that is we've talked about the first 25 games. The next 25 after that actually don't get much better.
Yeah.
And that's
tough,
where I think it gets interesting. That's where, okay, 50 games into the season, you are right around that trade deadline. You are looking at your standings and saying, okay, how bad do we go and lean into this, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where, if in a hypothetical scenario, 50 games, you're 15-35, I think that's a much different conversation than, say, if you're like 22-28. You know what I mean? And so I think that's the part where, yeah, if you're 15-35, maybe you do say, oh, you know what? This is a little niggle that someone might play through on another night, but maybe this one he sits out. And so those are the decisions I think that change when you've got that disparity in records. And that's
Mhm.
where I think having that top heavy schedule can influence things potentially down the road.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I guess for me, like the tanking stuff mostly comes from like guys you trade at the deadline and like serious injuries that befall you. Again, I don't think last year's team was intent on pissing away the last 20 games and going 2-19 after Scotty Barnes got hurt. I think they wanted to play that thing out, and I think there's a reason to want to do that, especially if you recruit a lot of losses already. Like, what is an extra 8 wins going to do for you down the stretch if you kind of actually try? You're still probably going to be in good lottery position. I guess this all comes down to me, Big V, of like, I think the range of outcomes for this team is about as narrow as any team in the NBA, where no matter what they do, no matter like barring some catastrophic injury to Pirtle or Barnes, like or Quickley, like they're gonna be, I think, somewhere between the 7th and 11th worst teams in the league, and there's not a whole lot they can do to change that station. And so, with that being the reality, I do wonder how much they try to, hit the full tank button down the stretch if they've already had a pretty rough go when they've talked about like they don't want to compromise competitiveness. They don't want to compromise like building something and sort of laying a foundation here. Maybe they feel 50 games in, they've actually done that. And, they feel like they've paid their dues and they can kind of hit the eject button for the rest of the season. People who listen to this podcast know I hate that. I think it's dumb. I think it's lame. I think it's loser stuff. I think it's anti-competitive, but hey, franchises do it, so we got to live with it. But I am curious, just sort of, at what point do they deem, okay, we've done enough building, let's hit the eject button? And it's fascinating to see how the schedule is going to play into that, because that last 20 games is so easy. Like there are some horrible teams, and if they manage to weather the first part of the year and they're through 50 games, they're like 20-30. There's very real chance there's like a play-in spot to be earned, maybe even like a 9 seed in the Eastern Conference, just because of how light that back part of the schedule is. But we'll see. In general, like strength of schedule, it's really tough until the teams you play get injuries and aren't playing well and are in bad form. And so this can be a moving target as well. We'll see. But we'll come back on the other side here, Big V, and talk about Jamal Shead, who is all anyone could talk about after the first preseason game. Rightfully so. He rules. And this is coming, of course, from the chairman of Jamal Cabal. Please send me your club dues to the LockedOnRaptors@gmail.com account. We're going to talk about Jamal Shead coming up in just 1 sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in North America, where you can start the season big with a big return on FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can go check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page, where you place live bets on the action that's going on. Maybe you think a team's going to score on a touchdown drive. Maybe you think a team's going to make a big comeback in the middle of the game. You can go and make bets on that taking place in FanDuel's very easy-to-use app. And when you get started with you'll get started, that is, with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right. You place one $5 bet, you get $200 in bonus bets to go play around with. And of course, it's not just the in-game bets that you can go and wager, right? You've got your season-long futures bets on the NBA and NHL seasons. The NHL season starts tonight in earnest. You want to go put some money on the Maple Leafs finally doing the thing? You can go and do that, even though you might be throwing your money away. Either way, go check it all out at FanDuel.com. Get your $2 in bonus bets with a first $5 bet. The official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Back at it here with Big V, Vivek Jacob from Raptors in 7 as we, and a Sportsnet, of course, in all sorts of places. Cricket commentary extraordinaire. He's wonderful. He's doing everything. Here, now we're going to talk about Jamal Shead. He is cool. He is awesome. He does really cool defensive plays. He has nice passing acumen. He's got a great first step. We're all very excited about Jamal Shead after his first preseason game. He was quite good in the summer league as well. After now the initial preseason opener fervor has settled a touch a couple days out, we've gotten a chance to collect and compose ourselves. After watching Jamal Shead's thrilling debut, what do we actually think are the realistic expectations for him in his rookie season? Will he even be in the regular rotation for the team? Is this just a preview of Raptors 905 being a wagon? Like, where do you come down, Big V, on the proper expectations here for Jamal Shead, it's always, always, always wise to expect rookies to give you nothing. Rookies drive losing basketball. That's what they do, especially second round rookies. Oftentimes they don't play at all. But Jamal Shead feels a little bit different. He's a 4-year college guy. He was a prolific winner in college. And he just kind of has that elite outlier skill in the on-ball defense that is, A, very important to what the Raptors seem to want to do on defense, and B, is going to keep him on the floor, one would think, as he sorts out the rest of his game. Where are you at with realistic expectations? I can't say it at all. Realistic Shead expectations. I can say that fine. It's a made-up word for Jamal Shead in his first year.
For me, so I'll put this out there first. I don't think Shead and Fred VanVleet are similar as players. But I can see them having a similar trajectory in this season. You know, you think about Fred having that 905 season where, you know, he does amazing things there. Then he gets an opportunity. I remember that road game in Orlando where he came in and he got a few minutes, and you kind of looked at him and said, "Oh, there's something here."
Sure.
And then the next season was when we really saw him make an impact. And so I could see something similar this season where obviously you've got Davion Mitchell in the mix, and I think he's going to be really important defensively and make an impact. You've got Quickley as your number one point guard. And so there's going to be, you know, depending on injury, there'll be opportunities, but I could see Shead sort of doing the whole back and forth and really looking good with the 905, and then maybe getting an opportunity in the second half of the season, more of an opportunity in the second half of the season, and then kind of riding that momentum into next season.
Sure.
What do you think?
I mean, that's the fair, reasonable approach, I think. You know, no, he's going to average 18 a game and be the starting point guard, and Immanuel Quickley is going to get traded by the deadline, actually, because who needs him? No, I think that's totally fair. I think that's probably closer to right than if I was to come out and say he's going to play 82 games for the Raptors this season. Fred VanVleet played 37 games for the Raptors and a lot of garbage time, only played 8 minutes a game during his rookie season with the team. And you're right. Like, the second season is where he really took off. But you know, Fred VanVleet finished third in the 6th Man of the Year voting in his second season. Crazy. Shout out the bench mob. We love it. What a wild season. But yeah, look, I'm a little torn with it with Shead because, like the point I made earlier, he is kind of the guy who already most embodies what they're trying to do on defense, right? Like, if you're trying to have a team where your whole ethos is we're really annoying guarding the ball and we make life hell for opposing ball handlers, stands to reason that Jamal Shead, who might already be the best guy on the team at doing that, Davion Mitchell included, like, it would stand to reason that he's part of the plans this season. It's, and again, this is not your, and look, Fred VanVleet was a prolific winner in college. We know that. Those Wichita State teams were awesome. He was a 4-year college guy. It's a very similar arc, but I just wonder if where this team is at, this is not the 2016-17 Raptors where they were actually going and trying to do something really, really ambitious to go and get swept by LeBron in the playoffs. This team is not trying to go get swept by LeBron in the playoffs. They are trying to build something. They're trying to see what they've got. And I think there's a chance Shead plays more than we saw Fred VanVleet in his rookie year. If I was to set the over-under on 40 games, what would you say to that?
I would probably go over. I think just because obviously these are two teams in different sort of categories as far as, you know, being able to win.
Sure,
And that's what Fred VanVleet was competing against. And so with a team that development is firmly the priority, I could see him getting more than that. But I could also see it being sort of backloaded where we see it more in the second half of the season.
Right.
And the first half of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, he gets this run with the Raptors early, then goes with the 905 for a bit for, you know, that start of the season, is helping them in the standings, whatnot, and then sort of comes back.
Yeah, I'm torn between wanting to see Jamal Shead play for the Raptors and wanting to see him and Ulrich Shamshay work pick and roll magic and help him turn Shamshay into the beast he's going to one day become. Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. again, there's competition for Shead's spot. Davion Mitchell, in theory, is the backup point guard right now. I think it was pretty decent as far as what he did as a lead guard. I think Shead just kind of has a little bit more natural intuition for that position, honestly. And I think his passing is really impressive. Again, it's not just the defense Shead brings to the table. He's got a first step. He's got the passing vision. Like it's not only that he's a hound on the ball that makes him a viable NBA player right now, I don't think. But with the competition there with Mitchell, like, can you play them both together? That's probably a little bit tenuous. Is there going to be the run there for Shead? I think that's a reasonable question. So yeah, you're probably right in that early in the year, once the 905 season starts, like, he'll get the first few weeks with the team. And then once the 905 kick up, I'm sure he'll head down there for a bit, unless he just really impresses in that first stretch. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden, okay, Jamal Shead's part of the team. At this point, I don't think this is crazy to say. If there's a Raptor who's going to make an all-rookie team, I think Jamal Shead's the most likely at this point, based on what we've seen, based on what this team needs, based on how NBA ready he seems to be. I'm not asking, is it a realistic expectation for Jamal Shead to make an all-rookie team? But it is not by any means. But I also don't think it's totally out of the question that he has himself a damn good rookie season and sticks with the team maybe more than we thought he would when they drafted him to be, in theory, a 905 hand. Maybe this is preseason optimism running wild, but he's a pretty exciting dude, man. Whether he plays a lot this year or not, whether he's super effective or not, I think we all agree. Cool guy to have around, and quite looking forward to watching his journey over the next 5-6 months, and also many years beyond that, hopefully. We'll come back into the side here, Big V, and talk about the defense, which is new and revamped in the fact that, like, they're trying on defense. What a thing. What a concept. Our first impressions of what we've seen from the Raptors defense, what we've heard out of camp over the last week. We'll round out the show with that in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, which has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events easier than ever. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff so you only find incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's a beautiful thing. I use Game Time all the time. I've said it before. I used them in the summer when I went to see a couple baseball games in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. I've bought WNBA tickets in Vegas and Seattle for dirt cheap using Game Time. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. If you want to go see a Raptors game, you're probably not finding cheaper tickets than the ones you'll find with the Game Time Picks feature, as those tickets are always quite pricey. If you want to go see a Leaf game, same deal. And Game Time will help you find those best seats. You got panoramic seat views, so you know exactly where you're going to be sitting and what you'll see before you buy them. The lowest price guarantee, where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find something cheaper in the same row and section for less. And they have Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Wrapping it up here with Big V on a Tuesday as we continue our little grab bag, our little canapes here of topics from the Raptors preseason stuff over the last week or so. And the final canape we're going to munch here is defense talk. It's very exciting. The Raptors are trying to play defense and have a scheme and some ideas for how they want to do it. A stark change from last year's team where they never had the same group together long enough to instill a defense and identity and policies and principles and core tenets, et cetera, et cetera. So Big V, first impressions of the defense. Obviously, guarding the Washington Wizards in preseason, not the hardest task. They'll get that task again on Friday. It looked pretty good, though. And I think, with that really, really nasty point of attack stuff they can throw out there, pretty interesting. I'm fascinated to see what Immanuel Quickley looks like as an on-ball guy once we can finally see him in preseason action as well. But overall impressions of the defense so far and sort of broad takeaways from, again, one preseason game against probably the worst team in basketball that you want to sort of crystallize here for us.
Yeah, I think 13 turnovers in the first 20 minutes says it all. I think the Raptors' ball pressure was excellent. I think being able to start Davion Mitchell was a huge plus, and just getting that level of defensive activity. And then you get Jamal Shead coming in off the bench. And I think when you look at Davion Mitchell in the front line paired with Jakob Poeltl in the back line, That's obviously a really, really strong foundation and two
Mhm.
pillars to have. Defensively, I thought uh, Grady Dick was better positionally and seemed to be picking up on some things. Uh, I think his screen navigation was actually all right
Mhm.
when he was forced to chase guys around screens. So I think that was encouraging. And this is where, again, when you have better defensive players on the floor, it helps hide some of the weaknesses of the weaker defenders as well, right?
Sure.
And I think we saw some of that. So, yeah, overall, I think the big thing for me watching is when they're talking about all this ball pressure and pickup points and all of that. We heard Nick Nurse talk about ball pressure and want to, really be aggressive. And I think the big difference is probably that you're not seeing them switch anywhere near as much as we did with Vision 6-9, where we're
Mhm.
not seeing them gamble anywhere near as much uh, as we saw with Vision 6-9. And so it's a more controlled, organized defense with some of the same principles.
Mhm. Yeah, why send 2 guys to go get the ball when you can send 1 demon to go get the ball? 1 six-foot demon at that. Yeah, I think it was so refreshing, Big V, to watch guards fight over the screen successfully and stay glued to the hip of their man. Not something we saw a whole lot of from Raptors guards last season, from Dennis Schroeder to Quickly later in the year. It was a rough scene, and I'm really, really curious. I mentioned Quickly earlier. Like I like him if he can kind of tap into, I've talked about this, like his elusiveness as like an offensive player. If he can kind of bring that to the defensive end when it comes to screen navigation, when it comes to using his length to contest and harangue ball handlers and poke balls free. Like if he can be like a slightly above average defender, that is a huge, huge deal for this team. And I'm really curious, Big V, to see just how real the whole defense on the ball, being a maniac on the ball is contagious thing that Shed and Mitchell and Darko have been talking about, where like everyone's kind of buying in. Everyone wants to one up the other guy when they're sizing somebody up on defense. Like it's probably more of an unquantifiable thing, and it probably doesn't have as much impact as we like to think it does. But I do wonder just how much of an impact that sort of, well, that guy's doing it, so I got to do it kind of mentality has. Like, do you buy into that at all?
Um, to an extent, I think the main thing goes back to what you brought up earlier in
Mhm.
terms of, hey, like when Jamal Shead's talking about, hey, what's made me better? It's going up against Davion Mitchell. It's going up against
Sure.
Immanuel quickly. And I think that's probably the best aspect for, hey, when you're going to the basket strong and you've got Jakob Poeltl contesting the shot, you know, I think that's the stuff from practice that'll carry over the most. And so uh, that internal competition and that internal intensity that the likes of a Davion Mitchell and a Jamal Shead and uh, whoever else is bringing to the table, I think that is what will raise the floor of this team defensively more than anything.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, we're gonna play a game we play sometimes on this podcast. Is what sound did you make, Big V? What sound did you make when RJ Barrett sized up Kyle Kuzma on an ISO in the first quarter of that game against the Wizards and locked his ass down?
I'm gonna be honest. Not too many sounds in preseason. We're gonna keep it. We're gonna keep it chill. I mean, unless something crazy happens,
Mhm.
unless
Mhm.
someone whips out a 360 or someone, I will say, uh, I did get out a woo, when Kelly Olynyk was posting up and he was able to swing it all the way to the weak side corner
Mm.
to Ochai Abaji for a three,
Mhm.
and that pass was borderline Jokic esque. I
Yeah.
mean, that was fantastic. To me, that one uh got me a little woo. Yeah, I'll give you that.
So no sounds for the RJ Barrett defensive stand. You don't believe in his defense at all. You think he's trash. You think they should trade him by the deadline. I got it. Cool. On the record. Um, good stuff. No, I mean Barrett's the
Kyle
kind of
Kuzma, who went 1 for 7 and looked disengaged all night.
man. Oh man, gonna be a rough year for Wizards fans. Oh boy. I still can't get over Jack Armstrong with the Jordan Poole slander the entire night. What a king. Basically throughout the entire night, I hate this player. He stinks and I hate it. Paraphrasing, of course.
He only shoots when he has it.
Yeah, only shoots when he has it. Those are just parts of his game. He takes bad shots. God, we love Jack, don't we? Yeah, RJ feels like the guy. He's like the mystery man on the defense, right? Like, I think we kind of know what to expect from basically everybody else. Like, I think we'll get a slight uptick from Quickley. We know what Shead and Mitchell are capable of. We know Scotty's got the sort of event creation stuff and the rim protection. We know Yaka is a rock solid spine for the defense. If there is something there with Barrett, I mean, he's got to show it this year. It's huge. Like, it's a really essential season for him to take a jump defensively. And it might be the single biggest swing in the fortunes of the team if Barrett can go from what he was last year defensively, which was really, really bad, super porous, to, oh, this guy can actually hang. Like, do you, again, anything you saw in that first game give you any kind of hope, or is this like, we got to see a little bit more from Barrett? You know, he only played 14 minutes. The offense was the big star of the show, obviously. Any impressions on him defensively and kind of how he fits into this scheme?
Yeah, defensively, I think it wasn't too much to take away.
Yeah.
I think, you know, for the most part, he was fine. The only bucket that Kuzma got wasn't really RJ's fault. That was an inbounds play where Mobo didn't communicate the back screen, and so RJ lost Kuzma, and he was able to sky for the alley oop off the inbounds. So that wasn't on RJ. And besides that, yeah, he was able to stay in front. We've talked about him in a one-on-one setting, and so again, for me, it's going to be about, you know, how often is he losing his guy off a back cut? How often is he getting lost when he's trying to navigate a screen? And so, you know, maybe there were a couple of times where he was running into a screen and then he was just kind of out of the play, but you had enough going on defensively. And that's where we talk about better defenders being able to hide those weaknesses, and that'll help them. But yeah, I think I'm not going to pretend I have a full takeaway off this one half that he played against the Wizards.
This bad preseason podcasting, man. Gotta have takes. Gotta have takes. Yeah, I think with Barrett, you know, as much as the on-ball stuff is going to be telling, because he's going to have to guard opposing wings quite a bit. I think another interesting part to the point of the off-ball stuff is, like, when you're playing in a scheme where, and look, I don't know how much we're going to see like Jakob Poeltl hedge and stuff like that. I think we should see it because I think he's good at it. But like, if you're playing in a scheme that's trying to mess things up for ball handlers at the point of attack, sometimes things are going to leak through, and that second layer of help from the wings kind of ducking in is really, really valuable to avoid having Scotty Barnes have to do everything as the cleanup man at the back. And so, like, how locked in and on the string is RJ in that perspective, I think is really interesting to keep an eye out for as well. Sort of pinching in at the nail, stuff like that. Like, I think he's going to be asked to do a lot, and it's a big year for RJ. Again, if we saw the version of RJ we saw in 14 minutes against the Wizards in the preseason, feel pretty good about his long-term standing with the team. It's 14 minutes of preseason against the Wizards, so we'll see. But I feel like it's a pretty good place to leave this one for now. Vivek, anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Usual stuff. I've got preview stuff for Sportsnet. I have my latest piece for Raptors in 7, which was takeaways on the Raptors and Wizards game. So you can go check that out, and make sure you subscribe on Substack if you haven't already. And besides that, you can follow me on Twitter at Vivek Jacob, where I am slowly getting more active again.
Hell yeah, or sorry. Of course, you can find the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review on the YouTube. We're also there too on the YouTube, the old man said. Go subscribe there. And of course, join the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast. Free to join. As always, we'd love to see you in our Discord community. We'll leave it there. We'll be back again on Wednesday, likely with our pal Katie Heindel. We've got Doug Branson from Locked On Hornets coming on Thursday to talk about which of these two teams is the better shoe-in for the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference. High stakes stuff here on the podcast this week. And of course, there's a preseason game on Friday as well. Looking forward to that. Thanks so much for always rocking with the show and supporting. We will talk to you again on Wednesday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. Big V, I've hit the shot 3 days in a row. I'm on a heater I hit this, the Raptors are going 500 in the first 50 games. No, screw it. They're toast. Bye.